Thank you, Kirby, and thank you, everyone. It's really like coming home for me. I'm so happy to be here. It's kind of emotional. I haven't been to Lafayette for a long time, and this has really been a foundational place for my career. So many great friendships, foundational friendships to my career and my family, and it's just great to be here. It's fun to think about all the things here that I learned. The hunting, the fishing, all the things outside of work, the festivals, and just this time, the 9 years that I was here, truly it was one of the best times of my entire life. Saw so many good things. I learned a lot about leadership, self-awareness, spent so much time offshore learning from the men and women that really drive the value in the oil and gas business and our operations. Picking up things from them and just thinking back as we were flying down, I was thinking about a few of those stories and how production superintendent told me after I'd worked with him offshore for a couple of years, he said, "Doug, you know, when you first came here out of school, we just thought you were cocky and dumb." And he said, "You know, but after working with you for a couple of years, you're not cocky." and then just enjoying the area and all the excitement, the festivals and all that, several great friends, and Bart Boudreau, who's a drilling engineer with us, and which we had so many great times in the drilling department under David Allwell. He told me, he said, "Doug, you'll soon learn and grow to love two kinds of beer, Bud Light and free beer." And that was exactly right. But just so much fun, a foundational time. As many of you know, it was also a painful time for me. And my first wife passed away here. Many of you contributed to the Heidi Lynn Evans Lawler Foundation that was a 501c3 organization I created to help and assist mothers diagnosed with cancer that had young children. I want those in the audience that know and are aware of that foundation that it's still alive today. And still some almost 20 years past, we still make contributions to help mothers here in Acadiana, or particularly in Lafayette, that are experiencing those hardships and diagnosed, to try to help them and assist in a way. And some of the friends I saw today contributed substantially to that, and Jeff Moncrief, one of my dearest friends, has helped with that, and just that foundation still continues today. So, and thinking about this presentation, it's a difficult thing to stand up and talk about leadership, value, and performance in an environment that we're in today, particularly given that it's so ugly and so challenging. And throughout my career, the training I had at Kerr McGee and what I learned here in Lafayette was we always made the most out of everything. We did the very best we could. We always knew that there would not be any money. We had to figure out creative ways, innovative ways to get things done. And that actually, throughout the industry, we've seen a few periods that we've enjoyed really good times, but actually where we sit today is right back to a really, really tight time. When I left Anadarko, a company, and by the way, I'll say that it was not a given that I would be CEO of Anadarko. That's what Dave said, my brother. But when I left Anadarko, it was a very tough decision, but I truly believed that Chesapeake was a very strong company, one that had experienced great growth, that there were really fine people in that organization, and I considered it to be one of the biggest challenges in the industry. And through the past couple of years, we've done a lot of really good things there, or the people inside of Chesapeake have done a lot of really good things in transforming that company. I'll talk a little bit about that. But what we also have faced is yet again another rude awakening as to the reality of there are certain things we can't control. And external pricing factors have just crushed our stock, have crushed the industry. But Chesapeake, because of some of our debt load and obligations, it's been extremely difficult. And so, yet again, back calling on a time here in Lafayette when we didn't have any money, times were tight, relying on good people, good technology, good innovation. We're right back at it again. And I look forward to sharing that with you. I'm also going to talk to you just a little bit about the industry and just share my personal view. There's so much data about pricing out there right now, and when is it going to recover? It's anyone's guess is it could be right and could be absolutely wrong. And so I won't make this an official position of Chesapeake. I'll just share my personal opinion based on what I've seen and been studying here recently. So I've made the mistake in the past few years that when I stand up, sometimes I'll say things I shouldn't. So the attorneys insist that I put this forward-looking statement. I actually have a few folks here from Oklahoma City with me. One is our director of communications. He basically accompanies me everywhere because I say things I'm not supposed to. But hopefully this will protect me if something isn't right. So what we have today, I believe, is a worthy challenge in the industry, and a worthy challenge at Chesapeake. And I like to use this example of ad that was in a London paper in 1913, issued by Ernest Shackleton, Sir Ernest Shackleton, an explorer. And if you can't read it, I'll just read it for you real quick. Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. This is the oil and gas industry, to the T. The challenge that we have today, it's dark, it's difficult, it's challenging. Chesapeake is no different, but it's a worthy challenge for all of us. This industry has provided so much for this country. The economic growth that we've realized, the strength of the industry is something that Lafayette has played a huge role in. The technology, LAGCOE, just the things that we've all experienced and grown to love here. It's a major, major contributor. It's a worthy challenge that we still have yet before us. So just moving to a little bit about Chesapeake, and many of you know some of this background, so I'll move through. This is an organization that was founded in 1989. Our headquarters are in Oklahoma City. It's a fairly large company. We have an enterprise value of about $20 billion. We have about 40,000 wells across the country, and we produce about 650,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day. A very sizable outfit, one of the leading and strongest independents. We have about 4,400 employees across the company. We recognize that with our industry leadership in 6 major unconventional shale plays across the country, we have really the top 1 or 2 position in 6 of these plays. It's on the strength of that portfolio, truly, and the strength of the employees that the company is able to weather this storm that we're going through today. We still are the 2nd largest producer of natural gas in the country. We produce about 3 BCF a day. 12th largest producer of liquids. We've drilled about 8,000 horizontal wells in the history of the company, and that makes us the #1 driller of the horizontal wells, and still have a significant leasehold position for further exploitation and development. These assets are scattered across Texas and Louisiana, one here just up to the north in the Haynesville that is one of our finest assets. We also have a large position in the Marcellus and the Utica, both strong plays, and then positions in Oklahoma, which are quite meaningful to the company, quite meaningful to the state, and then a large position up in the Powder River Basin, all of which serve the company with good gas, good oil, good product diversity, and good flexibility depending on market conditions, whether it be infrastructure limitations, pricing differentials, anything that we might realize. The company has a lot of diversity and flexibility in our portfolio. When I came into the company a couple years ago, we put a new strategy in place. The strategy was really focused on driving value. So when you think about Chesapeake and what you know about Chesapeake of the past, it was an organization that grew very, very quickly. It was a company focused on growth. How fast can we grow? From 1993 to standing flat-footed, the company grew to a volume in 2014 of about 750,000 barrels of oil equivalent, really unparalleled in the industry to go from a company at 0 production to 750,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day. So a large amount of that gas, some oil, but quite a significant accomplishment. The cost of that, though, is that there were several financial instruments, several forms of debt instruments used to amass this large acreage position. In doing so, it put the company under significant duress. We had the great acreage positions, we had great assets led by great geoscience teams and engineers in developing those assets, but we paid dearly for it. The key is that we needed to quickly rein in our capital spending. We needed to quickly focus on how do we drive profitable growth from these assets? How do we make these assets make money? Many of you are aware and have heard that Chesapeake actually ran as many as 175 rigs in the U.S. at one time. That was more than double of any other operator, and actually more than number 2 and 3 combined. And you think 175 rigs, that was one of the things I knew coming into the company. An organization that can run 175 rigs is a talented, quality organization. We just were focused on growth. What went unstated is 175 rigs were running, and not any of them were making any money. So we were growing quickly, but not making money. And so our focus turned from a growth strategy to a value strategy, and these 2 strategic tenets really served as the basis for that. We added a couple for business and development and exploration of unconventional. I think that in times like now, you know that exploration is going to be limited, particularly in the Gulf of Mexico and the deep waters around the world. But we still have to continue to invest in exploration. That's where the greatest organic value growth comes from. We can be highly efficient in our operations, highly efficient in our development plans, but we must continue to explore. Chesapeake, like many other industries, is limited in the amount of money that we have to do exploration today, but they'll still continue to be strategic tenets for the company. And after we developed the strategy, we had to look really closely at what are the primary strategic metrics that drive share price appreciation. What drives value for our shareholders? We went through a rigorous analysis of several different metrics, of 16 in total, looking at 1, 3, and 5-year comparisons of how Chesapeake compared to our peers. And basically through that analysis, we were bottom quartile in almost every category. So it really required stepping back and looking at what drives the greatest performance, the greatest efficiency. We had to put in place new performance goals and put compensation programs linked to those performance goals. The history of the company had been based on putting compensation first, then strategic metrics, if any, and then a strategy. It was really driven around growth. So we had to look at everything, up top to bottom, and basically have changed everything in the company today. Organizational structure, accountability, portfolio management, all the capital allocation processes, a performance management system. So a significant overhaul within the company. We've seen a major transformation of the company in that shift from growth to a value strategy. Seen industry-leading capital efficiency improvements, something I'm very passionate about and throughout that I learned here actually in Lafayette with Kerr McGee. Cost structure improvements, we've had to sell several assets. We've spun off our service entity, which is a drilling contractor, pressure pumping, oil rental tools, and other non-core businesses that weren't focused on E&P. Significantly reduced our financial obligations and financial complexity, as well as reducing our legal and obligation complexities. And importantly, though, to me, we've drastically improved the reputation of the company, also improving our stakeholder relationships. The simple fact is that it doesn't matter if you're in Lafayette, Oklahoma City, London, Dubai, or wherever it may be. If your stakeholders don't want you to be successful, you're not going to be successful. And so that focus on good partner relations, landowner relations, vendor, contractor, services, that focus has completely changed within the company, and we've seen material progress in that. We've got several near-term priorities, though, given the environment that we're in. Just like every company, maximizing liquidity is really, really important. We have about $1.5 billion in cash on hand that we expect to end the year with, as well as an unsecured or a secured, undrawn revolver of $4 billion. This is really what gives us the ability and the confidence to say that Chesapeake will be okay. Chesapeake will be here for a long time. We have to focus on improving our margins. We've worked very hard to amend gathering agreements that have really choked the company, choked our competitiveness over the past several years, and continue to look at reducing our cost structure. And we also need to really look hard at continuing to find ways to do our operations better, more efficient, driving costs out and driving up our recoveries. Across the industry, you see longer laterals now, you see more recovery per well. And we'll talk about that more in just a minute, but it's so important that, particularly for Chesapeake with our high-quality assets, that we continue to improve our capital efficiency. And then, like every company, whether it's on the service side or the operator side, preserving our cash flow generating capability is absolutely key. The strength that we have and confidence inside of Chesapeake is that we've got a high-quality portfolio and we have significant growth potential for the future. Just real quickly on this, you can see in the bottom graphs, the left-hand graph shows how we've reduced our capital over 2015. I'll show you another slide in a minute that shows the whole industry. This is something every company has been doing. Important and speaks to the quality of Chesapeake's portfolio, however, you can see our production has remained flat across that time. This is key and important because at some point in time, low prices and assets have to recognize that where the best rock is. Where is the best rock? Where is the best opportunities to continue to drill? It's the companies that continue to maintain production for lower cost, lower investment that'll be healthy and survive through this mess that we're in today. This graph just shows kind of the break-even prices to earn a break-even or a PV10 of 0 in all of our different assets. It might be hard to see, but just across the bottom and in the red bars shows that our Haynesville, Utica Dry, Utica Wet, and Marcellus assets basically require $2.50 gas price to earn a break-even price or a PV10 of 0. Like you, when I see gas trading at $1.99 on the prompt month for November in the last few days, it's absolutely frightening. What does that mean? It means that no one is going to be making any money and that the challenges in the industry are still very significant. On the oil side, you can see across our portfolio that we have, I'm going to get something updated here. Okay. You can see our Powder River Basin, Mississippi Lime, Eagle Ford, and Mid-Continent areas basically are all sub $50, where those assets, as long as we have a $50 oil price, we'll continue to invest because of the quality of that portfolio. Excuse me. Sorry about the slide. I don't know how to get it fixed. There it is. Excuse me. So, kind of moving to the state of the industry. When I was at Rice in business school, they talked about how inventory is evil, no matter what business you're in. And we never think about it in oil and gas about how inventory is evil, but we talk about supply and demand. The key thing today is that we've got an inventory problem. It really isn't a demand problem, and it really isn't a supply problem. As everyone knows, we basically have a 1% supply that's caused a 60% drop in oil price. And you think, well, that balance, what's the big deal about that? Well, the big deal about it is that it's created this horrific supply across the globe and in the U.S. Of inventory, and we'll just talk about it in just a few minutes. We know that the lower investment that's taken place and the rig count impact is quite severe. But when are we going to see this actually break over, and kind of what's that timing for it? What's the likelihood that the demand across the globe will stay at 1% a year, essentially, or 1.25%? We'll take a quick look at that. And then probably the big enigma or the big question out there is what's going on in China. China is a country that is growing at 7%. Everybody's concerned that 1.3 billion people only have a GDP growing at 7%, which is phenomenal to me. That when you look at the consumption and what's happened with energy prices in China today, year over year, their oil consumption is up 500,000 barrels a day. Their electrical generation needs are up 7% over last year. They're consuming more gas, 17 million gallons of gas a day more than last year. And their gas prices have gone from $1.05 per liter down to 70 cents per liter. All that says is you're going to need more and more and more. I was going to put a picture in here. If you've ever been to China or Beijing or any of those Chinese cities, you see the cars, you see the fact that they add 13 million motorcycles every year to their roads, and 15 million cars. SUV sales are up 45% year over year. China is going to go crazy. It is absolutely going to go crazy in terms of consumption. There's no mistake about it. It will happen. It's just really the question is when. You look at this bottom right graph, you can see there's significant reduction in spending. These are the latest numbers from Barclays research that show 20% around the world, North America dropping its spending from 2014 to 2015 by 35%. When you look at this whole inventory picture, this graph, it may be a little bit hard to see from where you're sitting, but basically that blue shaded window shows the 5-year average of where the world commercial oil stock inventories sit. Obviously, it's a window. When we entered 2015, the red line, you can see what's happened is we've got 240 million barrels today of additional inventory, either sitting on the water or in storage around the globe. It's not going anywhere, and it's remained flat. What we've seen is significant inventory builds in the U.S. We really haven't seen them break over yet with the reduced rig count because of the number of turn-in lines and the inventory of wells that all the companies have. But this is what the problem is. 240 million barrels around the globe. When is that going to be consumed? It's not really how much we're producing and what the supply is. We know that's going to drop. It's when is this supply going to be burned off? Looking specifically to the U.S. Sorry, I'm getting excited. It's 100 million barrels. And you can see that rapid growth took place largely because of the Eagle Ford and the Permian and with the Bakken. And you can see basically since the first quarter, when it was increasing, rolling into the second quarter, that top red line, it hasn't changed. And it's just, and this is the problem we have today. This is the problem we're going to experience for some time. This slide also may be just a little hard to see, but the blue bars basically show how oil production has increased in the U.S. since 2009, with the 2015 forecast being about 13.6 million barrels, or 13.6 million barrels of production a day. That 13.6 includes all the NGLs, so in total, oil production is kind of around 9 million barrels a day, with NGLs making up that difference. You can see in the red line how the year-over-year growth has started to change. And you can see that in the small green bars, that basically was the incremental volume added each year. And when you think about the fact that the number of rigs has been cut by more than half. Basically, in order to keep production flat, the 40% of the rig count that we had a year ago have to be adding twice the production or have to be drilling at twice the speed to maintain flat production. And it quite simply isn't happening. And it's not going to happen in the United States. So when you think about this, and this is another hard graph to see, but if you look at the first 3 quarters of 2015, we know production's been starting to decline. Supply is declining as marked by the red line, but all these forecasters are showing an increase in production in the fourth quarter, or actually a decrease in the surplus, and then showing in the first quarter of 2016, we actually are going to show an increase in production. And this little sinusoidal wave that the forecasters are putting out there, I believe is absolute garbage. I believe it's garbage. The rigs are not drilling the wells at twice the speed. You see 10, 20, 30% improvement. You don't see twice the improvement. You also don't see the wells delivering double the production across the board. And so simply to say that we're going to roll into 2016 and we're actually going to see liquids growth of 700,000 barrels a day in the fourth quarter of 2016, a year from now, with the number of rigs that are running, is just crazy in my mind. I don't believe it's likely. It's further compounded when you look at what's happened with all the big guys, ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, BP, Total, and Eni, to the international companies. In 2010 to 2014, they spent more than $600 billion trying to grow liquids, and liquids decreased 27% over that time frame. Stating again, okay, so we've seen the reduction in the U.S. Despite some increases in OPEC, can we actually overcome this decline in the oil production around the globe? It is very clear that the majors are not finding and adding the oil production. This graph also, I apologize, may be a little hard to see. The key is that what's in blue is being funded today, what's in gray is not. These are major projects around the globe that have been delayed because of the prices. Those that are in blue are being carried out, such as oil sand plays in Canada, simply because they're far enough along in the capital cycle they can't reverse it. But you can see through 2017 and 18, the volume coming from these opportunities is significantly starting to decrease. What we have, I think, is that the U.S. shale business has been referred to as the new swing producer. And actually, I don't think that's true. I think what you're going to see is that as you, in the next year or two, when we burn through that inventory, what you're actually going to see is the U.S. shale start increasing again. What's going to be sacrificed is deep water around the globe, deep water in the Gulf of Mexico, which calls back to LAGCOE, to the Gulf Coast, to the international players, that the technologies and efficiencies, the cycle times for major deep water developments have to improve. If they don't, the swing, once you start producing, increasing production from the shales with a commodity price response, when will the majors start channeling money towards big major international projects again? You have to have confidence that you're going to have $60 or $75 oil for a long time. And it's going to actually, I think the new swing producer is going to be some of the most technologically advanced areas, and some of the areas that have provided some of the highest quality production around the globe, and that's actually could potentially be the deep water areas around the globe. I just want to make a little pitch for oil exports. In the event that you haven't been following that, we had a bill passed in the House of Representatives a few weeks ago, H.R. number 702, clearing for the elimination of the export ban on crude oil. This is a really, really important thing for our business and for our industry. Being able to sell our products on a global basis. This is good for jobs, it's good for prices, it's good for economic growth, and it's good for trade. Quite simply, why does the U.S. have self-imposed sanctions upon itself when we're eliminating sanctions on Iran and other hostile countries towards the U.S.? It doesn't make any sense. It'll be going before the Senate at some time and before the President. So as you hear this comes up, as these issues come up, I think the entire industry needs to rally and support that we eliminate that crude oil export ban. The health and survival of our industry, the growth in the economy that's taken place in the last 5 to 10 years is anchored on our industry. And this is something that's choking and very difficult for us to be competitive on a world basis. Looking at gas, I wish I could say that I thought that gas demand was going to increase sufficiently to increase price. When I worked at Anadarko and was involved with the Mozambique project, is publicly reported those wells will produce between 100 and 200 million cubic feet of gas a day. And the great thing about it is they'll produce for 10 or 20 years at that rate. You might have also seen that a company drilled up in the Marcellus and the Utica areas a shale well that produced 72 million cubic feet a day. Now, granted, it won't flow that for 10 years, but the possibility in the shales that you can bring on a pad that produces 300 or 400 million cubic feet a day says gas is here to stay, and supply will meet every single molecule of new demand without any problem for the next 5 years. So what does that mean? It means gas is going to be 250 to 350. It's going to be highly weather dependent. Just like we saw it break in the prompt month below $2, the challenge there is that gas is everywhere. It's below us in this building, and it can be extracted with a long horizontal and produce a 5 million cubic feet a day well, I'm certain of it. And that's going to put pressure on gas for a long time. It's not until true incremental demand and the true export around the world that we'd see depletion of other LNG projects that are developing, like Mozambique, like those in Malaysia, like those in Australia, actually come online and no other funding go towards those projects because of low prices, that you'll actually see the U.S. price actually respond better, I believe. So just kind of back to Chesapeake, the strength of the company is anchored in our portfolio quality and the geographic diversity of our assets. We've been a leader in capital efficiency and low cash costs. We've had a challenging couple of years. The message really in this is this company's been strong in the past, it's strong today, and it's going to be strong in the future. We need to be flexible and responsive. I think this is really a message to the entire industry in how we allocate capital and how we look at our business. We have to have a relentless pursuit of improvement, always looking, just as Lafayette has always been a leader in the industries here, energy business here, of looking for new innovative ways to do our business. How do we save time? All the companies, Kirby's company, all those represented here today are looking for new ways. How do I save 5 minutes on that rig a day? 5 minutes an hour. How do we be more efficient? How do we mobilize contractors, vendors, all the companies and all the service providers to be more efficient? It's something that we cannot take our eye off of, and the pressure on prices is going to be there for a while. The near-term priorities, as I noted around Chesapeake, are maximizing our liquidity and improving our margins, maintaining our cash flow ability, generating capability, and being as efficient as we possibly can. So kind of bringing it all together, gas, I see on a personal level, it's going to be in the 250 to 350 range for some time. Oil is going to, until we work off that supply, it's going to be around $50, and you may see in the 45 and the 50 and 55. That's not going to happen based on the current decline through 2016. So I really think we're going to see a lot of pressure on oil prices through 2016. And actually, until that inventory is gone, that evil inventory, we're not going to see any sort of oil price recovery, absent of a significant disruptive event in the Middle East, absent of a major demand change in China, absent of a major decrease in production in the United States or across some of these other properties that are producing around the globe. All that added together, though, based on the way things are proceeding at present, it just does not look like you're going to see anything greater than 50 on average through 2016, which just means we have to be that much more disciplined, that much more focused, and that much more driven to drive greater value, because it's not a game, going back to that Ernest Shackleton quote, it's not a game really today of just strategy and how we make money. It's truly a game of how do we survive together, and that we can thrive and flourish when this thing ends. Thank you. That's my presentation. You want to take questions? So I think we got just a couple minutes. I'd be happy to take any questions if someone has a question about Chesapeake or the industry. Yes, sir.
Take on the Keystone Pipeline.
My take on the Keystone Pipeline: sooner the better. Sooner the better. Absolutely needs to be done. Yes.
As far as your operations are concerned with groundwater contamination, no fracking, are y'all trying to head in areas that are less controversial than others, or are you just going to go to the sweet spots regardless of the environmental implications that are being hammered on us?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it was, despite the regulatory requirements, particularly with groundwater, are we focused on the sweet spots, or are we focusing on just going wherever we know we can get the greatest value? What Chesapeake is doing is we're absolutely looking for the greatest value. The regulatory pressures, the way that regulations increase, this is a company that will comply absolutely with all of the regulatory requirements. The industry has done a phenomenal job, I think, across the country, and I think particularly in the offshore environment. As regulations are put in place, we work cooperatively, we work closely as an industry, Chesapeake as a company, to figure out how to be efficient in our operations and honor and respect and comply with those regulations. So where we sit today, like our activity in the Haynesville, our activity in the Northeast, and particularly up in some of the federal regulations in the Powder River Basin in Wyoming, there's a significant amount of regulations that and permitting and steps that we have to go through. I think you'll continue to see companies go, though, to where they can make the most money today, where the best returns can be found, and work through those regulations. Yes, sir.
Welcome back to Lafayette.
Thank you, sir.
I work at the business school here, so I'm glad to have you back. Can you say a word about the geopolitical forces with regard to OPEC in the next 2-3 months, or some predictions?
Sure. So my personal opinion is I think that OPEC will continue to maintain its current stance of not cutting production. My experience in Anadarko and working around the globe, the Western capitalist thought process is not shared by all the rest of the world. Our capitalist view, when you get outside, many of you have worked in the international arena, it's more of a social world out there, truly. And what you find is that in terms of driving the greatest value, time value of money, is not recognized the same way that we recognize it in the U.S. So it's beyond me that you would want to maintain current production and get 10 million barrels a day, get $50 a barrel for it, versus cut 1 million barrels and get 9 million barrels for $80 a day. I mean, $80 a barrel. You know, I didn't do really well in math always, but I can do that in math. And it doesn't make any sense to me. And to think a sovereign wealth fund is continuing to deplete, Mike, you can attest I didn't do very well. So, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So why is that? What perhaps is the thinking behind it? You know what I think it is? I think they see a whipsaw coming that we've not seen before. I think they know that choking down the investment across the globe in deep water and major projects, the U.S. is a foregone conclusion. The U.S. oil man should never be underestimated. You think through time, technology, innovation, efficiencies, the U.S. oil man finds a way and will make it work. And that's going to be the case. And I don't think that the OPEC countries have neglected that. I think they know that. I think they know we'll figure out a way to make money at $50 a barrel, U.S. onshore. You simply cannot do it in international deep water areas. And so I think they're looking to see that break, that it's truly a given. The U.S. will start back to drilling when prices recover. You'll see a little bit of waffling, but I anticipate that those sovereign wealth fund depletions are going to be restored really quickly. And I'm talking in the 5-year time frame. Mm-hmm. Yes, Paul.
Doug, I want to make a comment really on behalf of everybody that has worked with Doug or been associated with Doug while he was here in Lafayette. We're proud of you and wish you the best.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
That being said, Doug, thank you so much. A little something to think about. So, Brooke, make sure he puts it in his office, what he thinks about us.
Thanks a lot, Kirby. Thank you.